Okay, so I get a lot of people that ask me about the various types of equipment that I use for my archery, and as to my quiver, what I've got in my quiver, the things that I keep in my quiver, the bows, the arrows, and everything else. So we're going to do a little bit of a equipment list. I'm going to show you what it is that I use, what it is that I carry, and why. And if any of it is useful to yourself and you think, I never thought of that, then I hope this video helps. So we've got all the information here on the table. It just needs me to relay it all to you. So let's get it all on. Let's talk you through each bit by bit, and I can give you guys an insight as to what it is that I use and what it is that I carry for my archery. Now I'm going to start with the bits that I keep inside my tackle pouch on my quiver here. Now there is a review on the quiver. I will go over a brief overview of this in this video, but if you want to watch a full review of the quiver made by Olliekraft, you can find this further down the video as well. But bits that I keep inside my quiver. Now this might look like a hell of a lot of bits to a lot of people. It might not look like enough things to other people. I know some people have commented that my equipment looks like a fire extinguisher. I mean, I don't get how you get that, but okay, cool. It works for me, and it's nice and light. Now the bits that I keep inside my quiver, first and foremost, is a good pair of a good multi-tool, a good pair of pliers that you can use. It's got everything I need. It's got a nice file if I need to sharpen any points. It's got a knife or a little knife in there. It's got pullers, you know, you name it. Everything that I need for whatever job I've got in here. This is really handy for pulling arrowheads out that are stuck in targets, like wood, in like the frames of targets, or in trees. It's a really handy thing to use, and I would highly recommend, if you haven't got a pair of pliers or a multi-tool, it doesn't have to be as big as this, it could be a small one. Make sure you get one of those on you and keep it on you as well. Now you could carry all this and keep it inside a box up in the car, but then when you leave the car and you're off shooting and you're away from your car and you can't get back, you need to be able to fix things in the field. So one of those is a very good thing to have. A pen for writing with. Obviously you all know what a pen does, but if I'm out doing 3D archery and we're scoring, I do use an app called Score Buddy, I think it's called. I'll put a link in the description for that. It's free to use, but you're going to get your score sheets from your NFAS competitions. You're going to need a pen to fill them out. Now I do obviously have my thumb ring. This doesn't get kept inside my pouch, it's just out on here as a reminder for me to talk about it, so we'll come back to that. Sometimes serving comes undone, or a flight might come off and I need to tie it back on, so I always carry a little bit of serving string with me. I don't carry the serving tool. I've never had to use it whilst I've been out yet, but I have had to use serving just to repair like knocking points, things like this on the string. These can all be done without having to use a serving tool, so a little bit of serving goes a long way. And obviously if you're using serving, you're going to need a lighter for burning down the ends, make sure it's nice and tight and it's not going to come off. So a lighter always comes in handy as well. Just on the off chance we lose a fletching, I do carry a couple of spare fletchings as well. Obviously I don't carry a fletching jig with me, but a small fletching like this you can usually glue on by hand, and it's not too difficult to get on. And I carry NPV cement fletching glue, which is the glue that I use for every fletching, every arrow that I make. I swear by this stuff. Highly recommend it. Never had an issue with it, never had fletchings come off with it. I have had fletchings come off with other glues, of which things like I forget what they call them now. Not that it's important, because use this. Yeah, so fletchings and glue. You can also use this for knocks, although I often prefer to use super glue, but you can use this as well. I often carry a few knocks around, so if I do have a knock that pings off, I can replace it as well. Now a lot of the time I'll use arrows which are self-knocked, which means that they are cut into the wood like this. Obviously I make these as well, so if one of those breaks, then I'd have to replace the arrow or cut the arrow shorter. But if I'm using carbons, I'll carry around a couple of knocks as well. A couple of points as well. Again, if you lose a point inside a target and you can't dig it out with the pliers, or you can't dig it out with your knife, then a couple of extra points goes a long way. A little bit of glue in the bottom, you can stick it back on providing your arrow shaft is okay, and you can carry on shooting as well. And occasionally when I'm out roving, I will lose arrowheads like these, so exactly the same thing. I can mount these back onto an arrowhead, and happy days, you can carry on shooting. And probably the most important thing, beeswax, for keeping your string nice and supple. It goes a long way. This obviously was a massive chunk, it's been used hell of a lot, but beeswax is always a good thing to carry too. So all of that fits inside that little pouch. We'll get the quiver on, I'll talk you through the quiver, and then we'll go through the rest of the equipment. So we've covered the tackle pouch, you know what it is that I keep in there. Let's move on to the rest of the bits that it is that I use. Now, probably the first thing I have a lot of people who are not familiar with archery ask is, why do I have this little tassel thing on the bottom of my belt? And this is purely used for cleaning arrows. So when you have an arrow that's gone in the ground, especially when you're roving and it gets full and caked in the mud, you don't want to put that back inside your quiver. Especially if you've got a leather quiver like mine and it's full of material on the inside where it folds, and it keeps your arrows in stiff so they don't fall out when you're walking around and they don't jiggle. You don't want to be lobbing a load of mud inside your quiver. And obviously it just adds weight to your arrow as well. So you give it a quick clean and shove it back inside your quiver. That's exactly what that's used for. So moving around a little bit more, I have a whistle that is on here too. Now, this is made of deer antler, and it's got a little bit of a broken arrow on the inside that's been cut through, and just a keyring loop that's been put on the end there as well. Now, under the NFAS rules in the UK, I don't know about anywhere else, you have to have a whistle on you when you're out shooting. It's not going to make any difference when I'm here on my own and there's nobody to hear it. But if you're out doing a competition, or if you're sharing a course with other people, if you have an issue, somebody gets hurt or anything like that, you need to stop the shoot, you need a whistle. So we have to carry a whistle with us at all times. Stick that back on there. Moving on a little bit more, I've got my pellet pouch. Let's move this down a little bit for you. So you can see there the whistle just sits on the side, and I've got a pellet pouch. Now this will be the same kind of pellet pouches that you see like people with air rifles use, and which is the reason why I've got it. But I actually bought this because it fits my thumb ring in here perfectly well. Now a lot of people will keep bigger pouches and little tackle bags like what you saw here on the belt. But I like these. They're nice and discreet. It kind of is in fitting with the rest of the equipment, and I can keep my thumb rings in here as well. So I can fit maybe about 2 or 3 thumb rings in there, but it's very handy for keeping those in and not losing them. Now obviously shooting let me put you back down this way a little bit. There we go. Now obviously shooting an Asiatic bow, and for a lot of you that have seen the channel before and see it develop, I do shoot thumb draw. So the thumb ring is an essential part of Asiatic archery and an incredibly important piece of equipment to get right. Now there's loads of different types of thumb ring. Some of them require more of a deeper hook, some of them require a shallow hook, some of them like the Manchu rings look like curtain rings, and they all perform very much differently. So it's important you find one that you're comfortable with, and most importantly one that fits you as well. It very much is like buying a shoe. You need to get one that's not going to be slopping off your heels and not going to be rolling around, especially when you are shooting arrows. You don't want your thumb ring pinging off into the distance somewhere. So the thumb ring, obviously for those of you that might not be familiar, sits onto the thumb like so. It twists, which locks it in place so that it can't come off, and it sits on the underside of your thumb pad like this. Now you can get them made of leather as well. Some people use a leather one. In fact, we'll come back to this, we'll leave it on, but yeah, that's how it sits on there. So yeah, the pellet pouch, nice easy place to store it. I always had a habit of putting them in my pockets and then forget what pocket I've put them in. I'll take my trousers off and then I can't find my thumb ring, and they're not cheap either, so it's a good idea. If you're like me and you lose them, get yourself a pellet pouch. That works really, really well. So next on my equipment is the bow holder. Now the bow holder, I do like using a bow holder. Sometimes it's a pain in the ass, especially if I've got a longer bow and it twists and it gets caught under the backside of my legs. I can sometimes fall over. But I would, if you like the use of a bow holder, I would definitely recommend it, because there have been times before, Sabden Fold included, where if I'm out on the course, I just need two hands to like traverse the scenery. If I'm climbing up a hill, I need to be able to walk. I don't want to be digging my bow in the ground and things. It's just a handy thing to have, especially if you're out roving. If you don't want to sling it over your shoulder, I can have it in here. I can just walk around, I can do what I need, I can use my hands for anything I need. I can eat my sandwiches, I can eat my food, I don't have to be thinking about where I'm putting my bow or sticking it in the ground. So it's a handy bit of equipment to have, and it doesn't weigh anything, and it's not in the way when I'm shooting either. So it's just nice and easy. Bob's your uncle. Moving around even further, probably the one thing that gets disputed a lot is a knife. Now, do you need a knife? I would argue yes. Some people would argue no. They would say you can use a screwdriver or whatever it is, but you can stab somebody with a screwdriver as well as a knife. So I think it all comes down to intent and the type of person that you are. But in saying that, you do need to make sure that obviously you keep yourself legal, and legally speaking, this knife is probably not legal. But I'm on private land. Nobody's ever coming here other than other archers, and the only thing that this ever gets used for, other than occasionally chopping up some beef burgers if I go shooting, and obviously it gets cleaned as well, is digging arrows out of trees that I just can't get out with the pliers. It's the only thing I use this for. Other than that, cutting my serving string if I need to make some new nocks. Arguably I could do that with my multi-tool as well, but the one thing I don't like with a multi-tool, which I do like with a knife, is that if I'm digging in something hard in order to get an arrow out of a tree or out of a wooden post, is that sometimes a multi-tool can snap back on your fingers, that knife can fold and you can cut yourself, and I always used to do that. So a nice, strong, robust knife, I can dig it out, get my arrows out. That's pretty much all it's ever been used for. Other than that, digging up the ground if I'm roving in order to retrieve an arrowhead that's come off. If I've lost quite an expensive medieval arrowhead, I'm getting that bugger back, so I'm digging out the trench. And that's all that ever gets used for, really. Could I have another tool to do that with? Probably, but I like my knife. So that lives in there and it stays covered up. And obviously when I'm moving between places to come shooting, all of this stuff gets put up into a bag. It's all sealed up, nothing's on display for anybody to be able to see. So moving on from the equipment, you've seen the pouch, you've seen the knife, you've seen the bow holder, you've seen my little bits of equipment here, and the quiver. The quiver is made by Olicraft, as is everything. So feel free to go and hit him up for a quiver. He does do custom designs. This quiver is based loosely off of a Manchu quiver. They come in a few different shapes and variants, but they're all very much similar to this. And the Manchu quivers have an extra flap on the back here as well. So occasionally when you see me with the bigger arrows or like whistling arrows, I can segregate these into here, so I'm not eating up any space inside my quiver. These has a lot of folded material down the middle that keeps your arrows in, so I can tip my quiver upside down and nothing falls out. It's nice and easy, but that comes in handy for keeping things in. Sometimes if I'm doing 3D archery, I can put my arrow rake in there as well, and it's nice and simple. I can fit arrows in the front, I can fit them in the back, I can fit them in the middle. I could probably get the best part of maybe 20 arrows in that quiver, 12 in the middle here, and then the rest can be dotted between everything else that's in there. So yeah, nice short video, but that's the equipment that I use for when I'm doing my archery. I hope I've given you guys maybe a few ideas if you hadn't thought about a few things, or if you want to know a little bit more about stuff, then just feel free. Obviously the arrows, sometimes I use carbon arrows, sometimes I use wooden arrows. If I'm in the woods like today, I'm going to be using carbons, not these. I like to save these for roving so that they don't get obliterated. These are the ones that I've built recently on here with the birch bark at the bottom, wood stained shaft obviously faded out with turkey feathers, and a hand carved self knock on the front, on the back of there as well, held in place with sinew. So full set of those. They are 30 inches long. Obviously my main bow that you will have seen is the Griffin. This is a 52 pounds draw weight bow at 30 inches. 31 inches is the max draw for this. This is a Magyar bow, or a Magyar bow, Hungarian design, obviously with static sears at the top here. So sears is what is another term for a lever, essentially, which, if for those of you that are not familiar with Asiatic bows, a sear is a lever. It's not a recurve as such because it doesn't curve back. and this is made from bamboo. It's got, in fact, to be honest with you, I forget what it's got. Ovankol, the dark wood is Ovankol. It's got Kirinite tips. It's got a bamboo laminate over the front with a glass belly on the inside, and it's got purple heart just on the underside of the sear here as well, and a little bit through the riser. And it's got stingray skin, obviously polished and smoothed off on the front with a leather grip. So that's my whole kit. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next video.